Good morning. Here we are, brewing happiness, having a cup of coffee together on a Friday morning. Today is a little bit different. I am not prepared with facts and figures today. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different talk because I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about me. The story of the Queen of Happiness. Why do I like happiness so much? Why do I talk about it all the time? Why am I obsessed with the idea of happiness? And how has it come to be my chosen topic, right? I come from a background of process engineering, quality improvement, sales and marketing. I could have picked a lot of different topics, but somehow I always end up talking about happiness. And just, I guess one of the reasons is everything's about happiness. If you want to learn a new skill or get a better job, make more money, lose more weight, meet new people, all the things in life that we want to do, that's really about why. So you can be happier. So all roads of self-improvement, in my book, lead to happiness. You're improving yourself for a happier life, to get something you want, to get better, to get more happiness. I'll say it again. So instead of talking about other things, I decided to cut to the chase, talk about actual happiness. And so, I guess in my life, in my early life, I always thought I was happy. I tend to lean to the positive. I'm kind of a glass full kind of girl, right? I thought I was happy. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Very simple time, right? In the Midwest, a family that didn't fight, with parents who loved me, didn't yell much. We all got along pretty well. Not much drama in our house. I mean, it was a really simple time. We played outside. Parents expected us to entertain ourselves, and by entertain ourselves, that means we played outside until dark, right? We went to church, we walked to school, and as I grew up, I realized that not everyone's life was as peaceful as ours was. Some people had things going on at home that didn't affect my family, so, you know, I figured we were really happy. But as I grew up, I realized that as we were all going through our lives, well, we didn't talk about anything important, right? We rarely really had important exchanges. It was pleasant, but not deep. And in my house, whining was not allowed. You were just expected to figure things out and get on with it. We call it the family of don't ask, don't tell, right? Nobody really wants to know too much about you. You don't really want to share too much about yourself because that goes conversations that nobody wanted to have. So, in spite of having a nice, loving family, I felt a little alone. But I was sure I was happy, right? Although, even though in spite of the fact that I really could never talk about my feelings or problems, and I was trying so hard to fit in and do what was expected of me, not make waves, not make trouble, not call too much attention to myself. That wasn't valued, but do you know me? So I grew up thinking that was life, and I was happy, and I always tend to lean towards positive, so that's what happiness was, right? I grew up, got married, started having kids, building a life with a husband who disagreed with everything and had his own issues from his own family. So I really just hid from the trouble, right? Really just created a nice life. Good job. I earned 6 figures. We had a beautiful home. We lived in a great neighborhood. I was active in my community. I was busy creating the illusion of a happy life. See, I didn't really even realize I was unhappy. This is what we called happiness, right? This is what I was taught to expect. No drama, no trouble, right? If everybody is seemingly getting along, then everyone must be happy. Right? So going along in life. And then one day, my brother made an observation that kind of knocked me on my socks. You can always count on your siblings to cut through the chatter and get to the truth, right? They don't mess around. And he said, hey, did you ever stop to think? We were talking one day about my obsession with fairies. And he said, hey, did you ever stop to think that you love the fairies because you're always creating a fantasy life? I was stunned. What? Fantasy life? But I realized he was right. I was spending so much time creating the illusion of happiness, right? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was filling my life. I was in a difficult marriage. I was struggling at my job. I was filling my life with all these activities to hide my loneliness and my unhappiness. Flitting from activity to activity, always busy. And then my brother said that thing, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it it kind of changed the way I thought about things. And then one day, here's the big one. I was talking to a friend. I was telling her I just had this cloud over my head. I didn't understand it. This wasn't me. I said, I think I'm depressed. She said, well, you can't be depressed. You're the queen of happiness. And we both laughed and went on with the conversation. Because that's who I was to the outside world, right? I always presented myself as happy, positive. That's where I tend to lean. I'm going to make the best of everything no matter what. See, this feeling of this just wasn't like me, but I grew up in a house where we weren't really not allowed to indulge in unpleasant emotions, right? I just didn't recognize what was going on. And I'm an excellent repressor, right? So you don't want to deal with things. Shove them down, put the smile on the face, and keep going. That's life. So I told my friend. So I didn't think much about it until a little voice started speaking in my head. Okay, so my friend had made this comment about the Queen of Happiness. The next day, I'm sitting around, still depressed, looking for, the least horrible thing to watch on television, and I heard a voice whispering in my ear, "The Queen of Happiness would not behave so dismally." I heard her clearly, and she had an English accent. I can't explain it. She just started speaking to me, and she sounded strangely like the Queen of England. The Queen of Happiness would get up and get moving. She is perfectly aware that people are depending on her. What? She was relentless. She knew. So then the Queen started to visit me again and again and again. She offered practical advice, lead me back each time to gratitude, to the blessings of life. She helped me see the irony in judges I was holding on to and the forgiveness I'd been shown. Slowly my perspective shifted. And she guided me towards a journey of joy and peace that resulted in changing my whole life. Left the marriage, left the corporate world, started... Well, okay, let's back up. Like I said, when I was in the corporate world, I was a process engineer, a quality engineer. My job was to make things better, right? Improve processes. Suddenly I thought to myself, wait a minute. As it dawned on me that I had a problem. That happiness in my life was not where I wanted it. And by trade, I was a professional problem solver. That was my job. Fix problems, solve problems. So I took what was a problem-solving methodology that I'd been trained in, supposed to improve manufacturing processes, right? Reduce the defects in the widgets off the line, and I applied that to my happiness. Because that's who I am, right? I live in both the right and the left sides of my brain. On one hand, I'm creative and I write poetry and I do art, and on the other hand, I'm an engineer. And while I love to write poetry, I could talk about the process of writing poetry just as much. So I dug into the process of happiness. I dug in. I did I don't want to call it an experiment, but I ran an improvement project on my life using my manufacturing improvement principles focused on happiness. And man, that was 12 years ago, and I've never looked back. Changed my life. Learned about happiness, started putting into practice the things I learned. Started all kinds of things that, well, I talk about them all the time, right? If you're watching the show these days, you know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, one of the first steps that happened was I wrote a poem. I wrote a poem called, wait for it, The Queen of Happiness. So, it kind of encapsulated what the Queen did for me, and maybe she could help you too. So, the Queen of Happiness. Well, while I am the Queen of Happiness, I want to, before I read the poem, say, of course, anyone can decide to reign as the Queen of Happiness in their own lives. I did, and it was the best decision I ever made. But I didn't do it alone. This alter ego, I don't know how to describe it. Let me tell it to you in rhyme. In times that you're feeling down or giving in to stress, just have a conversation with the Queen of Happiness. She knows how you can sometimes get into a funky cloud and allow the little voices in your head to talk aloud. Because despite of all of our efforts to maintain a certain tone, there are sometimes it seems that we are negatively prone and given to the tendency to only see and find all the rotten things in Denmark that have occupied our mind. So pay the Queen a visit, and she will sit you firmly down and remind you what it takes to turn a smile to a frown. Because sometimes we forget that all of joy is ours to claim. If we leave it on the table, we have just ourselves to blame. Now, she doesn't give the answers or wave a magic wand. She simply asks the questions and then asks you to respond, since the answers to her questions can all be found inside, just waiting to be brought to light, since sometimes they're denied. She kicks that process off with this pleasing little quest of listing all you're grateful for and all the ways you're blessed. She asks you to remember the forgiveness you've been shown, and then she has you do the count of all the ways you've grown. The Queen rules with an iron fist and won't tolerate descent into the fog of hopelessness and all the baggage of lament. She knows when you indulge yourself and sit around and mope, there simply is no chance to turn despair around to hope. It's not that problems disappear or no longer have a place. She reminds us that happiness depends on what we will embrace, that what we focus on and hold determines what we feel. And good or bad or right or wrong, it's what will be made real. The Queen reminds us anytime we happen to forget that the power to be happy is as easy as it gets. She brings it all into the fore that it's all up to me, since most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Well, there you go. Now you have it. The origins of the Queen of Happiness and what compels me to talk about happiness with you, right? 1 second here. That compels me to talk about what happened with me. As the Queen began to visit me, she visited me over and over again, and she kept offering me practical advice to lead me back each time to gratitude, to really, really appreciating the things in my life that I loved, the blessings, help me see the irony and grudges, the forgiveness I'd been shown. Did I say this part already? Slowly my perspective changed. I shifted to one of gratefulness, to one of a focus on others. She guided me towards joy and peace. Queen of Happiness nudged me into beginning this journey that brought me to where I am today. My happiest self, my most confident, content, and creative self. It fuels the fire behind my desire to write and speak and be here every day with you, to write about the choice or to talk about the choices that we face each day and the tiny little changes in perspective and thought processes, and maybe some habits that can lead you to a happier life. Because isn't that all we really want? Is a happier life. So that's our show for today. Starting on Monday, this show will be appearing on the Brewing Happiness page. There'll be a link if you look for me here. And we're going to get Keep on keeping on, talking about happiness, brewing happiness, showing up in the morning for a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a cup of whatever warm brew makes you happy, and a positive thought to start off your day. All right, that's me for today. Make it a happy day.